What's up, good people, and welcome for another Black Panther Wakanda Forever review here. I'm Nigeria of Big Gold Belt Media. That is Sam of Team JVS, and we're finally getting together to talk about this film. Sam is like my should I say my co-pilot, or maybe I was his co-pilot for the world premiere. So we were both together when that first audience of folks got to see it. And then we got to see it again. So we had a couple of weeks now, I think in total, to kind of really metabolize our feelings, our thoughts. We have numerous reviews across both of our channels. So if you're looking for a non-spoiler review, looking for reactions, all of that is available. All that's in the link below. The links below. But this will be sort of a non-spoiler, but then we're going to actually tackle and dive into things. And then you're wondering, well, why are we doing another one? It's because I think that we've had the most time to kind of really sit back and really take in everything from the first minute shocks and the emotions to seeing it again, to the things we might have missed from speaking to it with other folks now, because that was the biggest thing. We couldn't talk to nobody for about a week.
Say nothing to nobody. Gosh.
Well. So now we get a chance to talk about it with you all. It is available as of November 11th. The embargo is lifted. So we are going to do half non-spoiler, half spoiler, and get all of our thoughts out for you all for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So Sam, I'm throwing it to you right away. Now that it's been about 2 weeks now, how do you feel about this film? Give me the whole rundown about it. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, initially for the premiere day, I was kind of like apprehensive about how it was going to go, because there's a lot of like negativity coming off of, the whole COVID situation. How Shuri was going to be as a character. Was she even going to be recasted? All this kind of stuff. I was kind of like, I wanted to go into it just being like, okay, I just want to have a good experience, because Phase 4 to me has been really lackluster outside of Spider-Man. And so I was kind of like, I want to see something different. And I was like, watching this, I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of weight behind what I just saw right there. Whoa, this isn't just about Chadwick. This is about grief. This is about moving forward, progression. This is about history. Like I was kind of just like thrown off at first. Like I think at the end of the movie, I saw different ranges of people in the theaters, either crying or taking a deep breath or just excited. But for me, I kind of just was like, man, I got to just take a moment. I called you and I was like, man, how you feeling? I was like, I don't really have words right now, because I need to take time to really process it. And then we, like you said, we couldn't talk to anybody else about it. And then watching it a second time, all the grievances, all the worries and the concerns, and then all the, also the emotions behind seeing it the first time were kind of out the way. I was just watching it to try to really just grasp what I saw and enjoy it. And I mean, as much as I enjoyed the experience the first time, I think the second time around, I appreciated it a lot more. I was kind of like, okay, I see what this movie was trying to be, what this movie was, because the hurdle was, Ryan initially wrote it with T'Challa in it. And then, of course, when Chadwick passed, he had to rewrite it all over again and also put in a very pivotal character to Marvel, which is Namor. And I was like, dude, that's near impossible. Like, nobody's talking about the fact that just for him to be able to make this work, there's been many different writers and directors that failed trying to do what he did. And I mean, dude, yeah. So
that's a brilliant point, because, and I'm not going to throw any names out there, and I'm not going to compare sort of folks' circumstances, but let's just say for grieving purposes, there have been folks attached to projects who have had to step away because they just couldn't do it. And thus, that vision and the sort of the architecture of what they were trying to construct never initially came to light. Not for all of them. And thus they became something else. So yeah, you're entirely right. Like Ryan did the unthinkable. He stayed with the project. He had to pretty much clean the whole chalkboard, erase it, and go back to it again. And one name you didn't mention is Letitia, who I think too. I said it in one of my reviews. I said, could you imagine if one you were given one assignment? He's like, hey, you're gonna have this role, you're gonna do something cool, blah 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 blah. He's like, all right, I'm ready for that. Let's do it. And then they're like, hey, you know what the circumstances. I'm sorry, but like, now you're going to be the lead. Now you
Right.
have to fill in your brother's shoes
Mm,
and
mm, mm.
carry that weight, that grieving, that processing. I mean, even and that not that Ryan or anybody from Marvel would say this, but you know, that sort of those shoes you have to fill, that responsibility, you know,
Right.
that stardom. You have a lot here, and it all rides on you. And I just couldn't imagine somebody saying, you know, basically being told that in one way or another. And well, she showed up and she showed out because she definitely did the job. So and I think that Letitia's performance is and like I do mean this in all due respect. I think she acts really well, and I think at times she doesn't in this film because she doesn't have to. I think the closing shot, you talked about the final moments of the film, the closing shot, I think it was a reflection of the audience. We kind of sat back in
Yeah.
silence and kind of was just like, wow, like one, we seen it, you know, whether
Hmm.
you liked it or not, but you seen it and you sat back and you just kind of, you know, you get hit with a moment. We'll talk about that in a second, but like you
Yeah.
sit back and you're just like, wow, no, they did it. They actually
Yeah.
did this. Like, and that moment of reflection, you can see her just crying, and you can't help but to see yourself in her in that moment of saying, like, nah, they really did do this. From all the ups and downs, from COVID, from the grieving and losing their star, and then other people having to step up and rewrite and all this thing, like they did it. And that was like a moment, I think, for at least our first viewing. I know that was a moment where everybody was kind of sitting back like, wow, like for real. I feel you, Letitia. I feel you, man. Like this is tough right now, you know.
Dude.
So
Because the thing is, like, Chadwick was a cool brother, man.
yeah.
Like he radiates charisma. Like he's a natural at it. Like it's like people he sucks you in, whether it's an emotional moment, whether it's an action moment, or whether it's just a somber moment. Like he can light up a screen just automatically off rip. So it's kind of like she couldn't. There's no way she could ever recreate what he did,
Mm-hmm.
character or actor. Like she couldn't do it. And then also Shuri, I mean, the few films we've seen, she's a genius, she's an intellectual, and yes, she loves her brother, but most of the time she's a happy-go-lucky, positive person. You know what I'm saying? Like this movie takes the concept of the most positive, nicest, smartest person you know, and they have the person or things ripped away from them. What does that do to a person?
Yeah.
And the worst parts of them starts to bleed over because of their grief, because of their lack of belief or hopelessness. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that's one thing I wanted to bring up in my review. We couldn't, but I think it was a lot of hopelessness that Shuri was dealing with, and hopelessness diverts people to do a lot of terrible and undermining things that they never would do.
Yeah.
And I think that she played that very well because the front half was kind of like, you know, it was a quick shock. It was like, oh, she's still bubbly, but then there's something missing there. There's something bubble under the surface she's not talking about. And they get to it, but it's not like she has to act through that. It's more so the rage and grief is what she's really kind of acting on. But
Yeah, because I mean, the camaraderie of her and her brother were little moments in the film that were major moments for the culture. You know, when
mm-hmm.
you go up to your homeboy, your homegirl, and you do the Wakanda Forever, like that moment that they do that on screen became much bigger than anything that the film put out for that entire period.
Fact.
Everybody was doing it just off that moment. I mean, granted, if you know Black Panther, the Lord, or comics, whatever it may be, you get it. You get the Wakanda Forever, you get the chant, the battle cry, whatever it may be. And
Mm-hmm.
and we seen it happen in Infinity War. So we know like when you throw it up, like it's going down. But they made it cool. They
Right.
they they ingrained it into the culture that when you see your homeboy, you see your homegirl, you throw it up. And like understanding that those scenes where we knew they were going to run into each other, they were going to have that brother sister moment, and it was going to be that. And understanding that not only the character, but the person realizes that these set pieces are reminiscing to moments that she did that. So you
Right.
are going to see moments of like where she appears to be in the shell
Yeah.
because she understands what the professionalism of being an actor is, but it's hard not to think. that she ain't thinking the same thing that we're thinking. It's impossible.
I think the
And
whole cast probably had to deal with the same thing. Because to be honest, when I think about it, going back, even watching the second time, I only remember them throwing this up twice in the
they only
movie.
said Wakanda forever once.
Once,
So
one
yeah.
time.
and and
um,
and it's genuine feelings. I mean, we were at San Diego Comic-Con, so when the trailer first hit, it was the most chilling feeling I felt in the act of celebration. I think I've only felt that feeling in like a celebration of life at a funeral, but this it didn't feel like a funeral, but it's just that chilling feeling that everybody was all on the same page of just like, we just seen something special. And although it was unlike that feeling and that atmosphere is unlike anything. If you've never been to San Diego Comic-Con, never been to Hall H, you know about that feeling. The Rock said it when they premiered Black Adam about that feeling and being in that hall. But understanding what we saw in the beginning of that day and what we saw at the end of that day were two
totally different
entirely
things.
different feelings.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
saw the emotion of Coogler, one of the most well-spoken people out there, who could barely muster up words, and Letitia and Denai and Lapita, and they're just all up there and they're just all hugging each other, crying. I just knew we were in for something special. I just
Yeah.
knew it. And it's just raw feeling. It's complete raw feeling.
Yeah.
To go back to the film, let me ask you a question that's obviously been the hot topic of the film, is the handling of T'Challa. What's sort of your thoughts about this?
Man, that's such a trigger. In the way that Ryan wrote this, to me, even when guys have seen it in the trailers, like the funeral scene, like T'Challa's homecoming, them it's almost like a celebration, of him passing through. I noticed then that everybody was wearing white, everybody was smiling, just culturally it was just there and present, but the family, they couldn't get there. Like everybody that was connected to T'Challa in one shape or form was dealing with this grief in such a very pivotal way. And I think that the way that Ryan wrote this, it wasn't necessarily for us to feel all these emotional pains and be hurt. It's more so about the process of dealing with grief and overcoming it, moving forward. So I think that was the reason why they sculpted it this way. Now, I'll say this about T'Challa: there are plenty of brothers and sisters out there that foundationally look at T'Challa as bigger than just Chadwick. That is an absolute fact. So, do I think eventually they should, recast T'Challa? Eventually, I think they will. It may be a different universe version of T'Challa, but I think for this film, I think that everybody that was a part of the cast, including Ryan, I think they couldn't muster moving forward with just recast. I don't think they really could, realistically. I think that's really what it came down to. I think if Ryan had to recast Chadwick to do this, I don't think he could have done it. I really don't. I think it would have been one of those situations he would have bowed out. The rest of the cast would have tried to, act along, but it just wouldn't have been the same. No matter what way, it wouldn't have been the same magic. But I do think that there is resonance to eventually the character coming back. I mean, I'm not even talking about certain stuff that we can't talk about later, but I think in general, T'Challa does need to come back just from a representational standpoint. But in this film, they didn't need him, but you also felt him the whole entire time, and that could be negatively or positively depending on the person and your perception of what you wanted coming out of this. Because I knew a lot of people that's been saying like, man, I can't wait to get, I'm ready for the tissues and I'm ready to get hurt and pain. And I've heard some people that saw it just recently. It's like, I was expecting to get hit so much more harder. And like the trailers, presented it was going to be this, that, and other. And I'm like, you went in with the expectation that you were going to be hurt. And that's not what Ryan wrote. That's not what he was trying to present. So that's why I mean, negatively or positively, it's going to be interesting, people's perception.
Yeah, it's also about how you deal with how do no one two people deal with grieving and processing grieving the same way, and no one two people really deal with death the same way. where
Facts.
you have folks that look at death as a loss, and you have look at folks that look at death as a celebration. And you did get a mixture of both of that in the beginning of this film.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just quickly say that, I mean, come on now, y'all. If you lost somebody that was really close and tight with you, and you had a moment and an opportunity to honor them, would you not? Like,
Right.
like, let's be honest now. Would you not do it? And they took the opportunity to honor their brother,
Yeah.
but to also tell a story. And I know people are just so hell bent on recast, but they seem to figure out a way to please everybody. And it's
Yeah.
odd to me because people are sort of for people are overshadowing their judgment without even seeing it. And again, we've seen it now twice. So, like, when we seen it the first time, the embargo lifted for the
The
first group of folks that got to
submission.
see it, and
Yeah.
folks were in both of our comments saying things. I'm like, well, I didn't see you there, so I know you didn't see it. So I just know
Right.
you're just saying silly stuff just to say it. Sit back and watch. You have to understand.
Mm-hmm.
This is my gripe right here. If you don't think that Chadwick family was sitting right there and wanting to make sure that this was handled properly, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
When you think about how things are done, you have to say, okay, I have to trust Ryan because their bond, they did the first one, and he was affected just as much as anybody in the family was. But you don't think when they got to that final cut that his wife, that his brother wasn't sitting there saying, you know what, this makes us feel good. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
why I can say something like that, because we're in an era now where everybody has something to say. When
Yeah.
Whitney Houston has a biopic, everybody has something to say. Everybody. Who was it? It was somebody else that had another biopic, and just the families were colliding, and everybody got everything to say. Understand that we're in an era now where anybody can get on Twitter.com, type
Yep.
a couple of tweets, and say, I don't like that. Let's not. Mike
Right. King
Tyson.
Richard last year.
Yep, bingo. Mike Tyson on Hulu. He didn't like that. He came out and said it. So understand that if his wife and his family did not like how this was done, we would have heard something by now. Because before even we seen it, they seen it 3 to 4 times already. So,
Facts.
like, let's come up with our own opinions now about, oh, I don't like how they handle it, and accept for what it is. Period.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, that's fine. But don't be basing like your way is law. Because I've had somebody telling me like, oh, Marvel just paying you to just say what they say, and all that hoopla. You know the deal. You know the deal. We're apparently employed by Disney, but not getting checks.
Look, hear me, and I'll say this on record. At the end of the day, it's a business. Make no mistake, we're not refuting that. But if Ryan is as close to them and the family as they were, I mean, this is the thing I'll say like this. I'll switch it up. Let's take what happened with Rise of Skywalker with the absence of Carrie Fisher. Look how that got done. Look how that went. And then compare it to this. It's a completely different thing. I mean, technically, Christopher Nolan had to do the same exact thing with The Dark Knight Rises, but that was different because they had a front end villain that's supposed to be a secondary villain, not the lead. That's like Christian Bale passing and then them figuring like, oh, well, I don't know if I can do this. And people saying I might quit. I don't know if I can, So I think all those things were in the balance. Now, how Kevin handled it, that I don't speak for that.
I
Kevin
gotta
don't pay
think that
me. So
I have to think that Kevin just was hands off. I think he had to.
I think he
To be
let
honest,
Ryan make that decision. Yeah,
you have
I did
to,
too.
because Ryan not only has a huge responsibility to the family, to the moviegoers, to the
Yeah.
story, but also to the culture. And I think a couple of those things aren't things that Kevin can actually sign off on. You say, hey, how do you tell a multicultural movie without your star? I just don't know. I mean, sure, he probably got some say in signing off on some things, but I just don't see him coming in and putting his fingerprints on something that we clearly see as a Ryan Coogler project. Through
Yeah.
thick and thin, his fingerprint is all over. It feels like a Ryan Coogler project. And
Yeah.
again, I just can't. I feel like I can sleep at night thinking that his family definitely was very much aware from the beginning to the end of how it
Yeah.
was going to be handled. Because of course they want to know how their husband, brother, family member, how they being, the tribute and the handling of it. Like,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, to be honest, they probably they certainly got a check
Oh yeah.
because
No,
it,
they
you
definitely
know,
do. Yeah.
so it's just odd. Anyway, let's we're at 20 minutes now, folks. So we talked a little bit about some stuff and whatnot, but let's get into the spoiler stuff. Let's get right into the nitty gritty. So, folks, if you have not seen the film by now, please come back and join in on the conversation as we talk about the stuff that y'all really want to talk about.
Yeah,
Sam, I've
and
been wanting. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say before we start the spoiler trend, do note I enjoyed the film. I actually enjoyed it a lot more the second time around, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of things I want to talk about. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie,
yeah.
but it's been a long this phase, man. It's been such a wash. This was a breath of fresh air for a lot of different reasons that I guess we're gonna get into. So
Yeah, I want to get into, let's go to the end of the movie here. So we seen it the first time and we chatted quickly afterwards. So and folks, I'm talking about the end credit scene, and I think we both sort of agreed that it felt like there was potential for a secondary end credit. Now I've seen it twice. We still haven't seen a secondary end credit scene. We're gonna both go actually to see the film, and maybe it happens then, maybe it doesn't. We don't know. But with that in mind, what's your thoughts about the end credit scene that we have? Break it
mhm.
all down, and do you think that it still is in service or in need of service of another end credit scene?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is one of the first, how do I put it? This felt like this end credit scene was pivotal to the whole entire story and the theme. It wasn't just like if this wasn't an end credit and it was just the end of the movie,
Yep, yep.
like it feels like he just like cut here. Okay, this is it. I understand how they did. It's almost like the hidden gem that was literally hidden, and that's why they did it that way. But no, this whole entire time, man, Shuri was just distraught. Her mom was trying to tell her something early on when Namor showed up. She was trying to have her burn her veil to be able to move forward. She didn't believe it. She couldn't move forward. The crazier thing is that, M'Baku made a lot of good decisions for the betterment of everybody.
Yeah.
But, Shuri was like, yeah, I'm not showing up. I got something else to do. And M'Baku was like, all right, bet. I'm challenging for the kingdom. Don't know what that means, but Shuri is now, in Haiti and seeing Lupita's character, and it was
Nakia.
Nakia, and I was like, okay, that's beautiful. But then all of a sudden it cuts back to it, and like she brings out this little boy, and I was like, oh man, it was when
Everybody said the
I
same
was
thing. I
sitting
was like,
next to
oh
Keaton next to
man.
me, and Keaton all of a sudden he just started to weep. I was like, oh, it's okay, bro. It's gonna be
Yeah.
okay. But no, for real, it was a very empowering thing that she needed. Like Shuri needed to have not only let go, but see like there is still hope. You know what I'm saying? Even though she's damaged, like, okay, there's my brother is still with us.
Let me let me
You
let me
know,
jump in there really quick because Queen Ramonda, you remember that what I feel is the best scene in the entire film when she talks about she lost everything.
everything. Yeah.
This right here was that reminder. Remember, she saw her mother again. This was
Yep.
that reminder that no, I know you feel like you lost everything because you wanted to burn the world down, but now you realize you do have a purpose to live now.
Right.
You got a little brother here.
Right. Right.
You got our little a nephew here. You can't give up, and
Right.
that's tying in what you're saying. That's where I kind of was like, when I saw that beyond what we started to know what was happening. I did the second time look at Sherry like, yeah, like you kind of was giving up at this point. You were
Mhm.
kind of making do with like, this is your life. You don't want to be the queen. You don't want to be a Black Panther. You just kind of just gave up on things. You felt like your service was done and you didn't have anything else to go forward with. And seeing your nephew now, it's that moment of just like, man, Like
Yeah.
life is crazy. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
because I was gonna say is that a lot of people don't think about it. The second time I thought about it, I was like, this is her last remaining relative because everybody else is gone. It's like this is it. And so then it's kind of like my head would go, oh wow, I have to protect my brother. I have to make sure nobody wants to kill him because from the line of succession standpoint, he is, I mean, of course he's gonna have to challenge for it, but as far as the throne, it's like, okay, now I had to grow up, I had to be his protector. I had to be my brother's son's keeper, kind of thing. And it's just crazy because now it's like there's more reason for her to go back to Wakanda and make sure things are prepared for him
Uh-huh.
so he can be able to come back home. Because again, I actually liked M'Baku in this because he made a lot of good sound judgment. But now it's going to be a situation when this boy, grows up, what does that look like, later on? So I think that's a really good segue going into a Black Panther 3. Now I'm kind of like, I'm curious to see where this goes, especially depending on how much time goes through. But the other
Yeah.
thing I'm gonna say, and I do know that I was hoping for one other end credit scene only because when they went to the UN and the queen was like giving them the business, and I was kind of like, oh man, all these other sovereign nations. I was like, and they're talking about vibranium. Like, you know what? We already seen Moon Knight that Von Doom is a thing. Like, Doom could possibly make a run at trying to get the remaining vibranium that was from the wreckage before. But I mean, that's what I was thinking that they might just to tie in something for Marvel's sake. Because
Yeah.
in this movie, this was really just a standout. There wasn't any other Marvel tie-ins at all.
You had I'm about to call it the Runaways, the Thunderbolts. Obviously, you kind of setting that up a little bit. And you're right because I mean, Namor mentioning that he's a mutant also has like implications. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for
the
sure.
the nods towards powerful nations has been alluded to more than enough times in this film. So like
Yep.
at some point now, everybody knows what we're talking about here. So yeah, that's why and everybody suspected that Doctor Doom would be involved with this film. Now, after seeing the film twice, I don't think we need Doctor Doom. But an end
It's not
credit,
needed.
yeah, end credit would have been interesting. But I also don't think we really need it now. But it would have just been like, it would have been icing on the cake, you
It
know?
would have definitely been. I think it would have been one of those situations where kind of like the Superman situation. Everybody been like, "Oh snap! Okay, what does that mean? What does this mean?"
Yep,
So,
yep.
but I don't. Do you think that it's either one or two things happen? Either one, they had it and they removed it, or two, they're keeping it for the public. I
For the
really
fate,
don't
yeah,
know. I really
yeah.
don't know, honestly.
But listen, think about what essentially what Dwayne the Rock Johnson did with Black Adam when people knew that there was going to be end credit. I mean, one way or another, it heightened the it heightened everybody's expectation for the film. I mean, to the point that everybody said, "I don't even care if the film is good or bad." The end credit was so crazy that like I love the film.
Right, it's true.
And this could be a contingency plan where they're like, well, just in case for some reason this isn't well received, we could throw that baby in there, and everybody, short term critic memory or short term fan memory, people's just like, yeah, the movie sucked, but that end credit was so crazy. I love it, and I mean it's the same. I love Miss Marvel. I still think it's the best MCU Disney Plus show.
I
But
agree.
let's be honest though, when she mentioned mutant, that was and then an X-Men theme, that was the biggest takeaway from every episode. It's the same thing with She-Hulk. When she mentioned mutant and all breaking the fourth wall, that's all everybody was talking about. So maybe this is a plan that they could have. Because to your point that I had not realized, but I think we should put just a little bit more emphasis on the end credit that we did get did not seem like it was an end credit. It looked like it was just the end of a film. It was not anything that they had to film after the case where there's like, okay, wait, we need to add something, which tells me that this was always a part of the plan.
Yep.
Always. It felt very fluent with the film that it literally could have been the end. And they wanted to maybe add an end credit because that's like the Marvel way. But it felt
Mhm.
very, very much like just the ending of the film. And it works. Two reasons
Yeah.
it works, because this young boy that we seen twice in the film, he was at the school when Queen Ramonda showed up with the two girls, when they were speaking French, which, by the way, this film speaks 4 to 5 different languages. I think I counted
Yeah.
4, but I think there may be one more maybe missing. But when they went to Haiti, they were speaking French. So when the kids came there and they greeted, that's the first time we seen that boy. And the little boy is handsome, and it's sad because we will never get to see him act in this film, because of course the next time we come back to Wakanda, that boy will have been aged. And
He's gonna be
now,
grown
folks,
for
this
sure.
whole recast T'Challa, it ain't no recasting here. This is just a new T'Challa. So now you can essentially go through the ropes of casting and bringing the next person up that don't
Yeah.
have to even fill shoes. They just could be themselves, because this is another T'Challa, and it just works, folks. We back to the thing we started this review on. We started off with the tribute and how they handling the death of Chadwick Boseman, and y'all wanted to know how are they going to handle the recasting. Both were done here easily,
Yeah.
easily. So stop complaining. Sam, let's go to you talked about Marvel tie-ins. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't think there's much to give. But what do you feel about the introduction of Riri Williams, and where do we go from here to Ironheart?
So that's interesting. So actually, a lot of people have been giving Riri a lot of flack because they call her the quote unquote comic relief. But my
No.
thing is, I feel like they interjected Riri the same way they did Shuri.
Yes,
She
they
was
did.
smart, she was funny,
Hip.
and she's not just I didn't look at her as like checking off a card or just the pseudo this putting her in Wakanda. It was more so like, okay, whoa, the government used this chick and she's sitting there just trying to hustle to make it.
Yep.
And she's got her own convictions. She's got her own backstory that we didn't get a lot of at all. Even just talking about her dad and the car, even
Yep.
like the fact that she had a suit already ready, like, and she also is respectful because, in all honesty, I'm assured that that suit that she made probably have vibranium. She's like, nah, it's all
Yep.
good. Like, I
Yep.
just want to be able to pay it forward
Yep.
because your mom saved my life, and you've also put a lot of emphasis in protecting me. So I think that they built her up really well. If I look at all the other Phase 4 movies, but they've had a lot of young Avenger, types in this one.
Yeah.
This one was the one I was kind of like, okay, this ain't an America Chavez. I like how they handle this. I was like, I want to see more of her. I want to see her in Armor Wars. I want to see her in her show. Like, I want to see where they take her character
Yeah.
because I actually like the actress and I like the way they handled her. Now,
Yeah.
I think the question was she needed? I think the way that Ryan wrote this, it was required for Namor and his people. I think they had to have a focal point of bringing it back to why, all this even started. But I mean, if it was written differently, yeah, no, she didn't necessarily need to be in it, but I think that she was a pleasant surprise. And I liked her in it, especially in the first half. The first half of her and Okoye, that whole ashy forehead, I was cracking up. But
Yeah.
nah, I think they did a really good job with Riri in this one.
Yeah, a great point. Riri does kind of get introduced as Shuri, but there's differences, and I think the differences is that you can say skill set, power set, whatever you want to be, that they're essentially the same. Okay, we'll leave it at that. But understand that like one is handicapped here because of sort of that that obstacle of grieving of Shuri. That's why she's sort of absent to the level of intelligence that we know her to be. So Riri come in and kind of like rejuvenating her, essentially, kind of like, hey, and they having that moment like, oh yeah. And I love that because I think that's very true to anybody who's ever been through anything. You get with your friends, and your friends kind of like get you going. It's that little bit of energizer, giving you life, because maybe there was a moment of depression, a word we haven't said today, but yeah, why is it hard to not look at Shuri and say she was depressed?
Right.
And lost your mother, lost your brother, your nation's under attack, and like to get somebody like Riri who looks up to you and knows what you're capable of, and you look at her and like, yeah, that actually reminds me of myself. It's sort of it's definitely not a comedic release, but it is sort of an emotional release for the
Mhm.
character because that person kind of helps her restabilizes to go forward.
Yeah.
So I think Riri's importance was pseudo necessary, but I thought her introduction wasn't big. And I think why? Because she has her own show. When we can get the full blown
Yeah.
introduction of, just her first time equipping the suit and all sorts of different iconic moments that she could get. Even in the final battle, like, we got her, we got very, like, we
Dude,
know she's
her
there, but not a big
her action
impact,
scenes in the end, I was like, yo, she was putting in work. He was putting in a lot of work. Like, matter of fact, it would have been a lot of more dead Wakandans without her.
You're right
And
about that. They only had 5 left, so
look, I'm gonna talk about that later when we get to it. But
so what else has everybody been asking about? So in credit scene, the T'Challa's death. Um, look, I guess we can bring up Namor and the mutant thing. What's your reaction to him proclaiming himself to be a mutant? And the biggest question now is, where do we sort of see the introduction to, well, of course, who we all waiting for, the X-Men? How do you see this play into things now that we got, sort of 2 mutants introduced? The introduction and the terminology of mutants introduced about 3 to 4 times now, but we still don't have the X-Men yet. We don't even have an announcement for it, but like, obviously things are all going to be building to that eventual reveal to some of the most iconic X-Men, whether it's a Wolverine, which we know for Deadpool, actually. But yeah, where do you kind of see this going now that he now proclaims as a mutant?
yeah, I thought it was actually really dope because I know that, from a comic book standpoint, the first technical mutant was, of course, Apocalypse, but the first
Mm-hmm.
identified mutant, was Namor. And so I thought that that was really dope that they went for it and that Kevin allowed Ryan to introduce technically the first proclaimedly found mutant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that Namor was dope in this was icing on the cake, but I'm curious to see where this goes because kind of like you got 500 years this man's basically been on Earth, so you would kind of think there are other mutations outside of the plant-shaped herb. Now, I said this a long time ago, and I think I talked to Lucas about it. I think that what happened with the X-Men or any other people that are mutants, that Professor Xavier's probably put a shroud over people's minds of certain events or certain
Mm-hmm.
things, because there's no way there's no way they wouldn't be, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. There's no way you can have a whole group of people. You can have a Wolverine here alive and nobody know. There's no way, so I'm thinking that Professor Xavier has kind of put a shroud on everyone. Now, how they reveal that, what that looks like, is going to be very interesting for 616 because, we did in Doctor Strange. It's kind of like, oh, okay, this is a different universe. That's how they handled it. But what does this look like for this universe? So it adds an extra layer of mystery to it. I hope they take care with it because now that people are expecting mutants, you got to make sure it makes sense. You got to make it make sense.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you though about Valentina in this one because Valentina was in this. I think honestly, because she was in this, I was expecting that end credit because it didn't really. I was kind of like, I understand Martin Freeman's character because wait, hold on, Ross, is he Thunderbolt Ross's son?
No. You know what? I gotta be virtual. I'm about to look it up. But every time they bring up Ross, that's the first thing I think about is it. But obviously they still got to work on the casting there, and maybe that's why they're going as old as.
Dang.
Yeah, let's look at this up. Let me look this up real quick. But anyway, I mean, like, yeah, at some point, introducing Valentina is just the idea of just how.
Pushing that somewhere. It was just
Yeah,
weird her being in this. I was kind of like, she kind of feels out of place outside of her relationship with him, and I was kind of like, well, where are they taking her with this? It just kind of felt left field. I was kind of like, that's why I was thinking for an end credit scene, because then
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, she's got tabs on this other sovereign nation. kind of thing. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Maybe that's why they want to go older with Harrison Ford because of that. But let's find
yeah,
out right now
because
if
it's
there is.
Martin Freeman is Everett Ross, but I don't remember because I know. Okay, so he got a daughter, Betty Ross. I don't know if he's got a son. It's just weird.
Yeah, Betty from the Hawk. Yeah, quickly forgot about that real quick. Yeah, looking up Everett right now. Let me see.
I don't really know.
Um,
Let's see. What's it in?
he
Tracks.
was tasked by Thaddeus Ross. No, they don't say any relations. They just said they all in the government together.
No, that's real suspect, bro. Even matter of fact, he was married to her, and I was another thing. I was kind of like, that's weird. They were married before.
Yeah, she definitely dropped that dive. Just like, all right, and he definitely was like, "Oh, my wife's calling. Gotta get out the car." Let me see. Yeah, no, I'm just looking. I do not see anything that says they are. Uh,
You watch. They're gonna do some
yeah,
craziness with that.
good point though. They could actually do something out of the blue. What else?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
so what else? What else? Spoiler wise, should we hit on real quick? Trying to think what else everybody else has been kind of nicking on. Um,
Um. So
if not, what's some of your some highlights of the film, whether it's acting, performances, characters, or just moments of the film, full blown spoilers that this really was worth noting right now.
yeah, this is one of those times where like I just can't believe how they tackled everybody's different form of grief because Angela, bro, she ate up scenes, man. Like there were times where she was like the strongest mother you could ever see, and how she's handling her people while also processing her grief. And then the moment that Shuri got kidnapped, and that moment with Okoye, I think that was the strongest scene in this because Okoye pleaded with her, like, "Look, let me die for my country." And I was kind of like, the queen was like, "You know what? You're done. Like you lost. You think you lost something? This. And like that was such a strong performance. But it was the subtle moments for me. It was these beautiful moments where when Mbaku went to Shuri at the funeral site and he was like, "What does your heart say? What is your heart telling you?" And she was like, "My heart is in the ground right now. I don't got nothing left." To the moment that we've been waiting to talk about, I've been waiting to talk about your boy Killmonger. Killmonger was like, "Look, you ain't like your brother. You're more like me because you the one sitting there talking about you want to burn the world. What you want to burn the world about? What's going on inside of
Yeah,
you?"
yeah,
And like he was like, "Don't disrespect your mom. Your mother decided to sacrifice her life for this girl. But
yeah,
why are you doing this?" Kind of thing. And
yeah,
it was like those moments. And even when she had that other moment with M'Baku, and M'Baku was like, "Look, bro, they are saying that if we get into direct, contact with them, this is gonna a long lasting war. I don't want that for us. I don't want that for our people." And I think this is where I loved Letitia's acting in this one. She was like, "I don't care. I want him dead." And I was like, that is selfish. Like you're about to lose a lot of people. Now I have a gripe with that. I'll talk about it later. But moments like that is where I find like a lot of Marvel movies recently have not been doing that. They've just been trading that off for comedy. They've been trading it off for kind of fluff ultimately. Some of the shows have been hitting those little marks at times, but this is one of those ones I was like, there's weight and value to each one of these small little interactions. And we haven't even really talked about Namor and his convictions. Like what Namor saw, he was like, "Look, bro, I seen what y'all about. I seen what y'all about. Like they're gonna come for y'all next, and the time is gonna come." And he was menacing as much as I was like, you know what, Ryan, you are 2 for 2 on your villains. Like you gave us
yeah,
Killmonger with 2018 Black Panther, and with this one, like he's just a great villain, bro. Because
yeah,
he's not a villain. Like, there's a reason why he's doing everything he's doing. I mean, you might disagree with him, but
And this is very much on par with the comics. He's always been like an anti-villain. I believe he's even
yeah.
credited to being one of the first anti-villains in Marvel.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I say it all. I've said it in every review I've done, so I might as well say it now. It's like, listen, um, forgetting his name now. Who plays Namor? God, his name's slipped
Oh,
by man.
oh my gosh, I never get his
It'll
name
come to
right.
me in 1 second because I make sure I pronounce it right. But let me say that, like, this guy comes off as charming and
Tanakh.
just Tunok Huerta.
Yeah.
Just charming and seductive, and like,
Mhm.
you feel for what he's going through, and then he whispers in there, it's like, and I will come back and I will bring hell on earth. So so don't try me. And listen, if you tried to call his bluff, remember how many Wakandans was left at the end of the film? 6.
Bruh, look, and that's the thing about this movie. There's a body count on this movie. Bro, there was so much. I was like, I said something to somebody. I was like, yeah, Infinity War, a lot of people got poofed away, but there's a lot of people that died in this joint. Like, bodies everywhere. Wakandans specifically, bro, they took L's. I mean, they drowned the Wakandans. They freaking were killing them. Like, it was. But yeah, I'll talk about that because that's one of my slight gripes about something that happens towards the end. But yeah,
Yeah.
man, Namor was not. He did not give a flip, bro. I
I
love that.
and folks, I think we're going to get a lot more Namor. I mean, I think that by performance, it just all of the advocacy that he done in all this promotional work, that Tenok is just, you want that person, you want somebody like him in terms of representation, in
Mhm.
terms of just getting it. I mean, like, and then getting it and killing it, like, a lot more. And I don't know where the next time we see him, but I can't wait already. Hell, put him in the next whatever film, put him in Quantumanium. Speaking of Quantumanium, here I noticed something, and the first time I noticed it, I didn't actually notice what I noticed. And I don't know, was it you? I don't know if it was my other buddy, but there's a scene where Riri is in the labs when the first time she gets into Wakanda, and everybody's doing what they do. Riri has her own set of tools and all her junk scraps that they describe them, and Shuri's doing what she's doing on the lower deck. But one of the Wakandans comes over to Riri and is basically like, "Oh, something, something, something." She's just like, "Oh yeah, quantum drive. I did something like that in school, something like that." I was like, "Uh-oh, you can't be throwing around words like that." And
Right.
then I'm like, okay, there's a couple of things I'm thinking. You think quantum, you think about time and all this other stuff. And first thing I thought was like, oh, maybe this is a way that they somehow can age little T'Challa. But that's not even the biggest thing to worry about right now. Forget that.
Mhm.
The Quantumanium trailer. Oh, we see Miss Cassie Lang with in her hand a quantum drive, which seems
Yep.
to have taken the entire family to the quantum realm, which
Mhm.
everybody suspects this is something that Kang is after.
Yeah.
He wants Ant-Man because he's a master. He's a master heist. He can get anything if he need a master theft. He can, in terms of all of the heists that he's been on. So if
Mhm.
there's something that's missing from Kang, everybody's talking about his, his time travel seat. Maybe that's what he's looking for. He's looking for something, right? But only
Mhm.
Ant-Man could do it with his knowledge of the quantum realm, his experience in instilling stuff. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, if we're gonna have an Avengers Kang Dynasty, I mean, that obviously means, just like the same build for Infinity War and Endgame, that you have Thanos looking for something that's in all of these different films.
Right.
So I started to think. So we had the introduction to the Quantum Drive in the trailer of Quantumania, which means Cassie has something.
Mhm.
Riri obviously has something that goes to the Disney Plus show, but introducing Black Panther. And I was wondering about the next phase of films coming out. And then I realized that, well, who else could have one? And I said, oh, isn't the Fantastic Four also a part of this slate as well, too? And do you now have your young Avengers core all attached to one particular device, all having the expertise to have this. And
Mm-hmm.
is this going to be what connects Kang to all of these different films? Is the quantum drive, and you have what's Reed's and Susan kid name, because I always forget. Not Franklin.
Right. That's how, you know what? That's right, because Kang is a descendant of Reed Richards. That's right. I forgot all about that. Let me look that up.
So I'm just thinking here that Riri dropped a big nugget in this, and
Benjamin. Yeah.
major connectivity
Franklin
here.
Benjamin Richards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who by the comments, also develops one as well too. So Fantastic Four coming out soon. And there is not only your core of Young Avengers, but also your will for Kang to have to be a threat to every single film that's coming out until we get to the Avengers movies. So, but last thing, like, you gotta consider that, when Cassie in the trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumanium, that she did say that we made this, and was it that Riri helped her make that? I mean, don't forget, Shuri did tell her to slow down on helping people with their inventions and whatnot because of the problems, the troubles that has caused in society. And Cassie, not really knowing what she's doing, got this quantum beacon that's sending a signal into the quantum realm. Was Riri the one that helped her build that? Is that the connectivity happening here? And then the secondary thing is a buddy of mine was like, maybe Nathaniel Richards is also a tie here into not only the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom, but into what for Kang as well too. And let's not forget that Nathaniel, coming in being the father of Reed and time travel and whatnot. It just kind of does make all sense that they can all be connected here, and be telling some amazing stories, but dropping the tidbits right now. There's that. So that was my little like, oh, oh, they put that on a hush in this. Like, I heard what you said, because certain words in films, like your antennas go up when you say mutants, when you say quantum, when you say infinity stone, anything of these things. People go like,
Wait, didn't Ant-Man make the device that aged who was it? Was it, I can't remember if it was the Hulk and Ant-Man working on the device that helped to age. I can't remember. They were, the device that they were initially working on worked, and they were trying to get into the past, but it aged one of them. I can't remember who got aged randomly by the device that they were messing up.
Oh, you talking about when they were doing the practicing in there?
In
No, it was
Endgame.
yeah, who was that just kept going
Wasn't it
through?
Ant-Man?
Did we get baby Ant-Man? Yeah, it was Ant-Man. He was the one that they were messing with. It was the Hulk and Iron Man sending Ant-Man in there to do the work. Yeah.
So this may have been a long time coming, because this isn't the first time he's gone to that place. And so, you know what? That's crazy. I can't believe you brought that up, because it's got to be for the chair. Because if he didn't get the chair, most likely he's just going to kill all other versions of himself and then take everything. Like, the chair would make the most sense, because then it's like, oh wow, now I have a fast route to kill everybody, not subdue them, kill them, and I'll be the one Rick. I'm just joking. And just take over everything. That's crazy.
Yep.
That's crazy.
That is it.
That's an interesting implication.
So that's my last bit of possibilities. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up? For
Yeah. So the thing was that at the end of the film, when we don't know if M'Baku is going to be designated king of Wakanda, because if she's not going to be there to challenge, because you remember when she was coming through, they said, okay, well, the queen is not here. No, not the queen. The princess is not here. Not the queen.
Yep.
Because it was Namor was like, you're the queen now, and she was like, man, I'm gonna kill you. But she didn't show. So that means, I think that everybody's gonna look to him being the king, right?
Yeah. enough pro wrestling in my life to know that, listen, if you don't show up to a match, you're disqualified. So
So I think that that's gonna be the thing. And the other part about it was if she had a showed up, I actually would have been pissed because I was upset about the fact that she decided to go to war with Namor based on her emotional reaction.
yeah,
And a lot of Wakandans died. And M'Baku warned her. Like, it was like, this is not gonna, I don't want this for us. I don't want us to be in this forever war. And she didn't care. And I wanted at the end of it to her to feel the ramifications and the weight of what she did. And I think that instead of her even thinking about that, she first needed to deal with the loss of her brother, which is cool.
yeah,
But if she would have shown back up for Challenge Day and just took on being the queen, I would have been pissed because I was like, you haven't taken responsibility for the loss of life that's happened from your decision with that. Because the first time I watched, I was like, I can't believe they didn't address that. But then I was like, okay, she needed to be able to deal with why the source of her pain, the source of her grief, the source of her wanting to do what she did, which is started with, the passing of T'Challa. So I was like, okay, I'll give her a pass because I understand that you need to first be like, it's kind of like if you lose a family member and it's just you already hurt, and then
yeah,
you lose them on top of that, on top of that, on top of that, like 2 or 3 more times, you just become numb to it. You become cold and desolate. And you never officially really healed from the beginning. It's just compounding now.
yeah,
So I think that I need a moment later on if they make a third one for her to be like, realizing not only she had to take responsibility for now her brother and helping him, but also, or her nephew, but also like the responsibility of her people because like
yeah.
she did a lot to try to save people, but a lot of it was really off of these selfish ambition things. And there was a lot of people that died, man.
I mean, I think you're talking about the dilemma in the next Black Panther movie is that like she ran away from the people when they needed her most. And yeah, sure, she can say like, she didn't feel qualified and she caused enough hurt and she thought this was the best way. And listen, the one thing I was gonna say earlier is that Nakia also ran because it was too much for her, but she also had a plan. And
Right.
if this somehow becomes like a thing that they just all get on the same page with, for saying Nakia came because she had to honor T'Challa's wishes and
Wishes.
saying, I
Yeah.
need you to keep our son on the low and I want you to celebrate me in your fashion off the grid. And this is why maybe Nakia says, listen, this is why you need to come because not only do you have a nephew, but maybe I can help you process the things in a better way than you've been having to do so. Remember, Queen Ramonda was telling her, you got to do it this way, blah, 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 blah. And every single time she threw something at her, she's like, I don't want to do it that way. So, it could just be that. I mean, every single thing that they said in Wakanda tradition, she hasn't been for. Even the burial of taking the herb, she just did not want to do it that way.
Right.
So, by default, her not coming, that should make M'Baku king. But also, I think M'Baku, because of the things you've been saying, has been getting it right. I think he easily gets the folks to rally behind him. I think he easily rebuilds the country when they come back. And I also think what happens here now is that this gap, or whenever it's going to be, if the kid is 6 years old, because that's how long the kid's been gone, so he's 6.
Yeah.
Let's say you add another 5 to 10 years to that, you make him 12. And I mean, let's see, Riri's 19 in the film. That makes Shuri older than her.
Yep.
Um, yeah, he still probably needs just a little bit more. But at the same end of the day, like if he does want to challenge for the throne, he has to, on paper, he has to look competitive. And I think that like we need that believable factor because right now the math ain't mathing. But I think that's sort of the conflict here of
Yeah.
M'Baku getting the people behind him, strengthening Wakanda, unlike we've seen before.
Mhm.
And then little T'Challa having to come back, and because he's the rightful heir to the throne, and this tell me this doesn't sound like a lot of things we've been watching recently. Yeah, a lot of Game of Thrones here. But
Oh man.
I think the one thing to really also consider here. Oh, also really quickly, cameo in the back of the challenge for the throne. UFC champion Kamaru Usman was back there for a quick second. Yeah, I was like, oh, they really got some champions back
Oh,
here.
snap.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he should have jumped in for a quick challenge. But yeah, I think as much as we know about Wakanda, we want internal Wakanda conflict, but we also want real world, conflict, and where does that go? So like, yeah, I think we pretty much can have like a little bit of reassurance knowing that's where they possibly can go, going back and saying like Wakanda has a new regime, a new style, a new,
Ooh, that's one thing we can talk about is the world's perspective on Wakanda because they don't know about Namor and his people and what they did. The perception is these
oh
Wakandans gone crazy. They done
yeah,
assassinated their own queen. They
yeah,
done came to the states and snatching up people. Like on paper, it looks really bad. And on top of that, the president decreed that he wanted to go against Wakanda. So I don't know what that means, but I'm curious to see how M'Baku would, because at this point now we've had T'Challa's perspective on it, we've had the Queen's perspective on how to handle it, but how
yeah.
would M'Baku, come to a point where the president's like, yeah, no, y'all gotta get with it, kind of thing. I don't know. Like his whole thing is not diplomacy. It's more so like protection, being strong, but he's become wise. He has become really wise, but I don't know how he would handle if the United States is threatening to take action on Wakanda, because then it goes back to what Namor was like. Namor was like, look, because I ain't gonna lie to you. I think even when we were in the theater, I was like, yo, he could have just millie walked the rest of them during Wakandans low key. Like, it regards him dying, like he would have died a martyr, they would have been done. But he said to his companion, like, I've waited years to do this. We could have just killed him. Like, no, 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 no. Trust. The surface world will come for Wakanda, and they are great allies. They
Good
have the
point.
Black Panther and a strong nation, but they're going to need our help. And this will work out. This is the long game. I've been living for 500 years. So I don't know if that means that they're going to need Namor later. I don't know. It's exciting. I think those things are really cool to think about.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant point, and I like the optimism that this film did kind of feel like a self-driven, self-sufficient film, but it does have implications and possibilities, and a lot of reasons for us to theorize on. Because yeah, we got a lot to work with going forward. I mean, we project this film is going to do really well. It's tracking third in box office of MCU movies after Doctor Strange and
Yep.
after what's number one?
Was it Spider-Man?
Oh, Spider-Man. Yeah, of course it's Spider-Man. um so yeah, and I think it's gonna do well. Holiday weekend this weekend. Obviously the first Black Panther was released in February, which a lot of Black people showed up for Black History Month because a lot of people thought the movie was something it wasn't. But that's okay because the money wrote it. And I think this was a little bit different. Coming out in November, I don't think it has any competition. It's just the fact of folks coming in and just paying the money to go see it, And I think that a lot will happen comes by Sunday when all the money is totaled in and we kind of see what it does. But by all means, I think we certainly with a great deal of confidence know we'll get a third film, and we'll see what Ryan has. We'll make sure Ryan still sticks along for it. You never know, man, because what Ryan did 2 Creeds and then that was it, right?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
now you
Oh,
have
that's a good question. He had an interview recently. I haven't read it yet, but somebody asked, would he potentially be directing Secret Wars, and what about the sequel for this and doing a Black Panther 3? I don't know what he responded, but
yeah.
I think I saw a quote. It's like, I put everything of me into this. So he's gonna
Mhm.
need some time. It would be interesting him directing Secret Wars, but I don't know. Brother's probably hurting right now. He probably needs just a moment.
Yeah, and they've been nonstop press tours all over the world. So,
Bruh, they've been gunning.
well, I think we done cover everything. Anything else you want to say or do before we roll?
I'll just say that any of you guys that haven't seen the movie and is watching up until this point, um, go and see it for yourself. There are going to be people that are going into this already upset that the fact that they didn't recast T'Challa, upset with Letitia Wright's COVID situation, and how far it got drawn out, and the dissension that was kind of going on in the back end. And a lot of people, their perception of even how Marvel's been recently has been really jaded. But do know, in my personal opinion, this is one of the first in a long time, in a few years, that we've got like a Marvel movie that does have some emotional weight to it. It's got some amazing action, great set pieces. I think I was gonna bring up, I don't know how to say it, is that the first movie was absolute black excellence. With this one, it is your emotional grasping of grief, but
Yeah,
also you're not alone in your grief, and you're not
yeah,
alone in your convictions, because the Latino community and the Mayan community of how they do this, man, I ain't gonna lie to you, they put as much weight behind Namor and his people as they did in 2018's Black Panther and Our People or Wakanda. I think some people may be jaded about that, because it's very different. This is a very different film. But I think
yeah,
if you really take it to form and realize, don't think of this movie as going to be something that's going to hurt you. It's more so something that it's going to take you on this journey. It is long,
yeah.
but I think you can pull some really good things out of it.
Yeah, well said, well said. Yeah, folks, go see it. I know there's a lot of commentary online, including our reviews, our recaps, this discussion here. But it's all in sake of you going to see it, and making your own opinion. Then come back and be a part of the conversation. Chime in on your thoughts, things you think we got right, things you think we got wrong, other little tidbits you want us to further elaborate on, connectivity, theories, possibilities, all those sorts of things. We'll completely embrace those in the comments below. But until the next big Marvel movie that we have to connect this one to, there'll be plenty of more reviews, recaps amongst the two of us here at Big O Belt Media and at Team JVS. All that in the description below. You all have a good time. Check out Black Panther Wakanda Forever in theaters November 11th. And we'll see you back around very soon for more reviews, folks. Thank you for watching.
Peace, y'all.